The long and arduous delay in the production of Star Trek IV has left many fans frustrated and wondering what exactly is causing the holdup. Since the release of Star Trek Beyond in 2016, fans of the Kelvin timeline have been eagerly awaiting news about a follow-up film. With rumors swirling, scripts rewritten, and directors attached and then removed from the project, it's easy to see why there's been so much speculation surrounding the movie. However, one of the key reasons Star Trek IV has remained in limbo can be traced back to a major shift J.J. Abrams made with his 2009 reboot of the Star Trek franchise. And as we await for its release, let us show you why Star Trek IV is being long delayed. While the delay may seem perplexing on the surface, it actually makes a lot of sense when you consider how Abrams' decision to reboot Star Trek as a standalone film series without a supporting TV show played into the ongoing production struggles. There are other factors at play, including the complex schedules of the Kelvin timeline's top-tier cast and the changing landscape of entertainment due to the rise of streaming. But at the core, it's J.J. Abrams' biggest change that has played a direct role in why Star Trek IV has yet to see the light of day. Let's dig into the specifics. The bold 2009 reboot and its long-term impact on the franchise. Back in 2009, J.J. Abrams revitalized Star Trek for a new generation with a bold reboot that reset the timeline, creating the Kelvin universe, which coexists alongside the original continuity. While Abrams' reboot was a box office success, grossing over $385 million worldwide, the decision to create a completely new timeline has had long-lasting consequences. Unlike previous Star Trek movies, which relied heavily on the foundation built by long-running TV series like Star Trek, the original series, TOS, and Star Trek, The Next Generation, TNG. The 2009 reboot didn't have that luxury. Every Star Trek movie before the reboot had been spun off from a TV series. TOS produced 6 feature films, while TNG had 4. These films had an inherent advantage. They were expanding on characters, stories, and worlds that fans had already invested years in. When Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out in 1979, the crew of the USS Enterprise was already a beloved cast of characters thanks to 3 seasons of TOS. Likewise, Star Trek: First Contact benefited from the 7-season run of TNG, which had solidified its place in fans' hearts. Abrams' decision to launch the Kelvin timeline as a film-first project without a preceding TV series to establish the characters was a gamble. While it initially paid off with strong box office numbers and critical acclaim, the novelty of the reboot began to wear off by the time Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond hit theaters. Without the depth of a long-running TV show to anchor the characters, it became increasingly difficult for the filmmakers to craft new, compelling stories that could stand on their own in the Kelvin universe. The absence of a TV show foundation. Had the Kelvin timeline launched with a TV series in 2009, it's possible we would have already seen multiple sequels by now. TV shows allow audiences to connect with characters in a way that films simply can't match. Characters like Captain Kirk, Spock, and Bones became iconic thanks to their weekly adventures in TOS and TNG. Audiences spent hours with these characters, getting to know their quirks, motivations, and emotional arcs. When the time came for a feature film, fans were already deeply invested in the characters and eager to see them in new, high-stakes situations on the big screen. In contrast, the Kelvin timeline's characters, played by talented actors like Chris Pine, Captain James T. Kirk, Zachary Quinto, Spock, and Zoe Saldana, Lieutenant Yoda Uhura, didn't have the benefit of years of character development on television. Instead, they were introduced directly through 2-hour films, which limited how much time audiences had to connect with them. While the 2009 reboot was an undeniable success, its sequels began to struggle to deliver original stories, often borrowing heavily from past Star Trek films and episodes. For instance, Star Trek Into Darkness was criticized for rehashing elements from The Wrath of Khan without the emotional depth of the original. The fact that the Kelvin timeline exists in isolation, without a supporting TV series to flesh out its universe, has made it harder for the filmmakers to generate momentum for future films. This challenge, combined with the massive expectations placed on each subsequent film, has contributed to the long delay in producing Star Trek IV, the cast's rising stardom and scheduling conflicts. Another significant hurdle facing Star Trek IV is the growing popularity of its core cast. When the 2009 reboot launched, many of the actors were on the cusp of stardom, but since then, they've become major Hollywood figures. Chris Pine, who plays Captain Kirk, has starred in blockbusters like Wonder Woman and Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. Zoe Saldana, who plays Litu Hura, is part of two of the highest-grossing franchises of all time, Avatar and Guardians of the Galaxy. And Zachary Quinto, Spock, has maintained a busy schedule with film and TV projects. Coordinating the schedules of such high-profile actors for a long shoot has proven to be a logistical nightmare. This challenge isn't unique to Star Trek, but it's compounded by the fact that these actors are no longer just supporting players. They're headlining massive franchises of their own. Scheduling conflicts have been cited as one of the primary reasons why Star Trek IV has faced numerous delays, with various start dates being pushed back or canceled altogether due to cast availability. Moreover, the tragic death of Anton Yelchin, who played Pavel Chekhov, in 2016 has cast a long shadow over the franchise. Yelchin's untimely passing left a void in the cast, and the filmmakers have been understandably cautious about how to proceed without him. Whether they will recast the role or write Chekhov out of the story remains unclear, but it's yet another factor contributing to the delays. Box office struggles and the shift towards streaming. While the first two films in the reboot trilogy were box office hits, Star Trek Beyond saw a noticeable dip in revenue. Despite positive reviews, it grossed just $343 million worldwide, far below the $467 million haul of Star Trek Into Darkness. This downward trend in box office performance raised concerns among studio executives about the financial viability of a fourth film. The rise of streaming platforms, particularly Paramount+, home to much of the Star Trek catalog, has also played a role in the shifting landscape. With Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Lower Decks, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds, all enjoying success on streaming, there's been less pressure to produce another theatrical Star Trek film. Instead, Paramount has focused on building its Star Trek universe on TV, where it can explore different storylines and characters in greater depth without the financial risk of a blockbuster film. The success of Star Trek on streaming has also raised questions about the future of the Kelvin timeline. While fans are still eager to see Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto return to their roles, the studio may be more interested in expanding its TV offerings than pouring resources into a big-budget film with uncertain box office prospects. Paramount's focus on streaming content could explain why Star Trek IV has taken a back seat in recent years. Development hell and changing directors. Star Trek IV has been stuck in what's commonly referred to as development hell. The project has gone through multiple directors, each with their own vision for the film. Quentin Tarantino was famously attached to direct a Star Trek film at one point, pitching an R-rated take on the franchise that would have been wildly different from anything we've seen before. While the idea sparked excitement among fans, it ultimately didn't materialize, and the project was handed off to other filmmakers. Director S.J. Clarkson was also attached to Star Trek IV in 2018, marking what would have been the first Star Trek film directed by a woman. However, her version of the film, which was rumored to involve time travel and a reunion between Captain Kirk and his father, George Kirk, played by Chris Hemsworth, fell apart due to budgetary concerns and contract disputes. The idea of bringing back Hemsworth for a pivotal role was an exciting one, but the costs associated with his involvement proved too high for the studio. Since then, several other writers and directors have been linked to Star Trek IV, but none have managed to get the project off the ground. Noah Hawley, known for his work on Fargo and Legion, was briefly attached to write and direct a new version of the film, but his vision was reportedly too different from what the studio had in mind. The constant turnover of creative talent has only added to the uncertainty surrounding the project. Will Star Trek IV ever get made? At this point, the future of Star Trek IV remains unclear. While there's no official word on whether the film is still in active development, there are reasons to be hopeful. Both Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto have expressed interest in returning to their roles, and the continued popularity of the Kelvin timeline characters suggests that there's still an appetite for more stories.